We'll send this piece out too so people can see it. So, for those who are new to Alma Me, I'm Angela Priest. I'm the COO here at Alma Me. We're going to start off each day just by giving you a little brief intro to what you do just or what we do just to ground you, and then we'll jump right into the speakers. So, let me just get my slides on screen here. Okay. So, Alma Me was born because Elena and I came together around a problem where we saw that many PhDs would send hundreds of applications for various jobs, and most of them would never get a single interview. And as somebody who's been in hiring for a very long time, combined with Elena's knowledge of how the PhD systems work, we were able to really understand why that was happening and figure out how to fix it. I have not almost 20 years, over 20 years of hiring experience, which is kind of frightening across a variety of different industries, including SaaS, various consumer brands, data, and technology. And so I've sat in many hiring rooms. I've reviewed thousands of resumes. I've interviewed hundreds of candidates over the years. And I've been part of the conversations that happen behind closed doors that you don't often get to hear about. And then Elena is an immunology PhD. And she left her career really, or in academia, realizing that she enjoyed the conversations happening in the coffee room more than she enjoyed what she was doing at the bench. And so together we came together to really help PhDs cross this barrier. And so what we do is we run PhDs job searches for them. So we run a done for you job search service. So you can kind of think of us like a marketing agency for PhDs. So we'll build your resume, your cover letter, and then we'll actually run the search for you so you can focus on the thing that matters most, which is preparing for the interviews. And we work with researchers across STEM, biotech, pharma, data science. For those who joined Indu, across chemical manufacturing and material science. And really what we help PhDs do is understand how to position themselves in a way that shows value to industry employers. We help them focus their job search so that it's more effective. We'll actually do the applications on your behalf so you don't have to undertake the stress of all of that data entry and form filling and all of that stuff that doesn't really add value to your search so that you can take your time back and so that you can avoid some of the burnout that is really high when it comes to the job search. And we recognize that the job search shouldn't cost your career, it shouldn't cost your mental health, it shouldn't cost your self-esteem. So trying to squeeze in your search around research, around teaching, around just like life in general, having to sit in front of those rejections day in and day out and burning out before you get the offer, meaning a lot of PhDs kind of stop the search or take pauses right as they're getting momentum. So we'll help you create that focus search. We'll execute it for you. And the goal is to get you into more interviews faster, have you go into those conversations well prepared through our interview prep so that you can get your time, energy, and confidence back. And so, what we've seen in our program is that on average, our program participants get 2 to 3 times more interviews than PhDs running their own search. And we find that their salaries are also on average 23% higher than their target. And so, if any of these things resonate with you, you can apply to our job search program on our website. Just go to alma.me and you'll find it there. If you are a university partner, we also work with university partners to provide digital courses that teach their students these techniques. We do this across the globe. And if you're an employer or a recruiter on the call and you want introductions to PhDs in our network, we're happy to do those at no cost. And we're currently working with over 50 very talented PhDs who are actively on the job search. So with that, and I'll send this out to everybody so everybody will have a copy of this if you want to look at it going forward. And so with that, I really just want to go ahead and introduce Elena to kick off our inaugural Careers Week. So Elena, over to you.
Thank you so much, Angela. Of course, I imagine this is a little bit different now that we had to switch. But I think this is also something I've learned, honestly, moving from my PhD into industry. Done is better than perfect. So you take the risk that sometimes things don't exactly work the way they do. I know this is very much against our PhD mindset, but I think it really just shows, one of the things I had to learn really to be so relaxed now and just, wing it and take it as it is. I'm super excited about this first careers week, and it was really born out of the need, of something that I wish I had when I finished my PhD. And I don't want to talk so much longer because we're already a bit delayed in the plan. I want to thank everyone for throwing in ideas on how to mute the notifications. I actually did it, but it seems to not work. So maybe, Angela, you need to do that. Go on the 3 dots and click on settings and then mute notifications. They're muted on my end, but I can still hear them. So I'm not sure if the meeting owner needs to do that. But yeah, I don't want to take more time talking, but actually get that panel kick-started. We have 4 fantastic speakers, and the topic of the panel is, should I stay or should I go? What do you think, Bob?
Let me know. Should I stay or should I
Okay,
stay or should I come?
good, perfect. Angela is going to pin the speakers, and I am not sure, Angela, is Ben here? Yes, here he is. Hello. So we have 4 fantastic speakers in the panel, and I'm really, really happy that you guys had time and you made this possible to be here. We have 2 academics, we have 2 still academics, I should probably say, Isabel and Bob, and 2 former academics, Ben and Irena. And I'm really excited to have you here today. I would say let's take, instead of 1 minute, 30 seconds, everyone 30 seconds intro, what they do today, where they, how they got there, and then we start off the panel with the questions. And Bob, you can start because you're the first person on my screen.
Okay, Bob Harris. I'm a professor at Karolinska Institutet in Stockholm, in Sweden, and I've been in the academic world for 42 years. So I run a research group which is very active, and for the last 7.5 years, I've been Dean of Doctoral Education at Karolinska.
Cool. Isabel, do you want to go next to the next one on my screen?
Thanks. Second academic here. So I'm Isabel. I'm the junior academic of the panel. I heard, although I've been, I think, now more in total with my study almost 20 years. So that's also a long time. I work in Amsterdam in the Vrije Universiteit Amsterdam as assistant professor there in the Netherlands. And next to that, I have a company called Next Minds, where I try to empower PhD students during their PhD or after their PhD. So that's a bit also why I'm here today.
Welcome. And next one is Irena.
Hi, everyone. My name is Irena, originally from Albania. Came to US to pursue a PhD in economics. I started working at Amazon straight out of my PhD for 4 years. And last year, I'm going to actually complete my first anniversary next week. I started working at Walmart, where I lead a team of PhD economists and data scientists doing research in the people science domain. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Welcome, Irena. And the next one is Ben.
Thank you. I'm leading a translational and data science organization at CSL, which is an Australian biotech company. I'm currently based in Zurich, in Switzerland. I've worked the last 15 years in pharma across four countries: Germany, Denmark, USA, and now Switzerland. And since 2013, I also have an adjunct faculty appointment at University of Florida. So I kind of never left academia and pursuing a double career.
Cool. That makes it even better, Ben. Amazing. 1 foot in, 1 foot out. So both worlds combined. And I want to kind of kick off this panel with a question to all of you. And we need to see how I will coordinate a little bit, who and when to talk. I guess otherwise it may be a bit messy. But I want to start with a question because we often talk about leaving academia and as it is a default pathway. The real question that I want to ask, considering that a lot of PhDs are actually leaving, and there is a lot of data on it, that around, I think, maybe 5% can actually make it to the professor stage. Should we think of academia as the default career still, or should we reframe this? Who wants to go? Bob, you seemed like you would disagree. Or Isabel, go.
Yeah, ladies first.
I saw Bob was like, no, yeah. I don't like this narrative of leaving something because it does sound like very negative, or at least to me when I say, oh, like, how do you leave academia? But I'm like, no, that's just, academia is like you have to study, so you do your study at the university, and then it happens that your PhD most of the time is at the university. Sometimes it's at a company, but most of the time it's at a university. So yeah, that's true. You're at like in academia because that's where it happens. But then, yeah, the next step, whatever, like go wherever you want. It's not leaving academia. It's just one next step in your career and that you will do at some place, it can be academia, not. Very likely it won't be in academia. So that's also, of course, something that we see that most of the PhD students, at least the ones that I ask, they say like they see themselves outside of academia.
I completely agree. I think the semantics is really important. And if we leave something, it's like it's the only option. We actually choose. We choose our careers. So it's like a proactive choice to do whatever you want to do. We're not leaving anything behind. We're moving forward.
Thank you. I love that framing from the two academics in the room. Actually, very well aligned with. I went to a conference where we discussed lots of professionals in doctoral education, and we exactly discussed the semantics about leaving. What do you guys say, Irena and Ben, the ones who actually stepped out? Do you think that that's a good way to talk about it, or should we reframe this?
I believe we should reframe it. I mean, as Isabel said, leaving it sounds like a betrayal, like you're betraying academia, but as a matter of fact, I mean, since I'm a numbers person, the math just doesn't work. Like it's impossible for all people that graduate to work in academia. And so we just have to go wherever we think that will have the most impact.
Cool, Ben.
I'd probably like the word transition better, as one can transition between jobs, one can transition between academia and industry. And just on the weekend, I met someone who did a PhD, spent 5-6 years in industry, did consulting, and now returned to academia. So very nice transition success story.
I love that framing, and I think probably a lot of people in the room had that question. Or I get that question a lot. So you just also answered something. Maybe some PhDs in the room may have. Can I ever go back to academia? I get that question a lot, and I have met some examples that actually made that transition to back into academia. But yeah. I love it. And what do you guys think, if you think about your world in which you are right now, what do you think is the biggest myth about the side that you're on right now? When you think about, what do PhDs think that you think is somehow untrue, or some beliefs around it?
Can I start with that one?
Of course.
The academic myth is that there are jobs for all of us within academia, and they're not. So becoming an academic is not a career for life. It's a very transient thing that you're going to do for a short period of time, and then you'll choose to do something else.
At least for most, according to the numbers, right? Not
I mean, you talked about the professors are not 5%, they're like 1%.
Yeah.
Or 0.5%. So it's like not everyone who starts that road will get there, and that's the myth we need to dispel.
I agree. Isabel is agreeing.
Or Irena? In the industry, usually people think that academics are slow and impractical. So for me, this has been one of the myths that I've tried to destroy because, having come from academia, I know that everyone in academia works very hard and that the months of the summer are never vacation months. There are a lot of like hard work research months. And for me, that has been one that I'm like, no, it's actually not chill. You have to work a lot.
Isabel, Ben.
Yeah, so one of the myths that I think I hear from PhD students who consider academia as like next step or to stay in academia, if we want to use this word, is that they think that because they love research, but I also already say that from master students, like because they love research, they're like, oh, I'm going to be a professor because it's like doing a lot of research. But then the more that you go on this path, the more you realize like research is kind of somewhere there, telling you like, oh, this is what you like to do, but then you get like hit by all these other tasks that you're supposed to do or that you actually want to do, like teaching, like committees, like all this stuff. And I think that's one of the myths, and that's one that I also had. Like I had no idea, like starting a career in academia, what it meant anyway. But I think that's one of the myths that I thought like, oh, I'm gonna do like research a lot, but then you realize that the more you grow on this path, the least research you're actually doing, and the more tasks you're doing that you're wondering like, wait, I'm not really trained for that, but okay, I would just do that because it's academia. You just don't really have a lot of support for these things, so you just do them.
I think the biggest myth with the industry, Ben, what do you think about this, is that it's a safe career.
Good question.
It really safe? Is it really safe?
If you look at the latest layoffs across pharma R&D across the world, it isn't as safe anymore as it used to be. And I think especially the pharma R&D world, where a majority of the people we hire have a PhD, and collaboration between academia and industry are key to foster innovation. Maybe that's a little bit different versus like some other fields. So I think the fields are certainly closer.
Yeah, I mean, we discussed this just at the conference where I was at. It is how safe. Everyone is always talking about industry being a safe place, but how safe is it really, looking at what's happening right now? Cool, thank you. Bob, do you want to add something?
No, I was just going to say,
No?
I mean,
Okay.
I know people in pharma that even when I was actually an undergraduate at university, we went up to visit Pfizer and talked to a guy there. I used to be a tropical medicine researcher, so parasitology, and they used to have a big parasitology section, and then they decided to cut it. So a guy came in, he'd been working on parasitology for 30 years. They said, do you want to work on cancer or do you want to be unemployed? That was his choice. So that was a hard realization that, the corporate world makes decisions that can affect you. But it's not very safe to be in academia either. So like.
Oh, okay, that was interesting. Did I just lose you quickly? Okay. So I have a question, and I think, Bob, you already answered it. So I want to actually ask Isabel more specifically. You, as I called you, a junior academic. Well, compared to Bob, it's all relative, right?
Yeah.
That's what I actually meant. But I actually want to hear. I want to hear from you, like, if there are PhD students or postdocs in the audience, do you think there is still a realistic future? You can build a career within academia, or are we setting PhD students who start up for disappointment as they enter academia? How I think you're the closest to. Yeah.
As a junior person, I think, because you say if we set PhD student for disappointment. So for me, entering a PhD is you sign basically for a number of years. So Netherlands is 4 years, so I would say 4 years here. But then it doesn't mean that you sign for the remainder of your 40 years of your career, because we don't know what's going to happen. Like if I look back at my own career in the last 10 years or even in the last 6 years, it was like nothing went according to the plan. Although I have now a permanent contract and everything, but like I mean, there was a pandemic, like I changed universities, all of that. So I think I think we should, except for those who say like really my dream is to become a professor, then go for it, because if that's your dream, then you will make it happen, and I hope you will. But then I would just invite like people to start their PhD, and during their PhD also to consider that as an additional training, because we are like trained, right? We go deeper into something after the master, and then to be trained for something that will come after that. But then we don't know what it will be. Maybe it's going to be in academia. Maybe it's going to be for a postdoc, maybe for assistant professor, and then you leave. Maybe it's like for 10 extra years and then you leave. Maybe you stay 40 years there. Maybe you decide to have a side business. Maybe you go out and then you come again. We do what Ben is doing. We're still having one foot there because, it's maybe nice to have something there. Or you do what Bob is doing. Like suddenly you realize LinkedIn is nice, so I'm going to post on LinkedIn, things like that. So I think that what I see So we hear a lot this academic career like a ladder or just a career in general. But for me, it's not like a ladder. Like you start and then, you grow. Like PhD students usually are also growing like as person in this age, So you don't know where you will be 10 years later or even 5 years later, because it depends how you will grow as a person. So maybe you start your PhD, you're like, hey, looks cool, academia. And then after 2 years, you're just like, no, I don't want to do that. That's okay. There's like so much that you can do outside of that. So I don't think we set people for disappointment, because for me, if I hire a PhD student, that's for a PhD. I don't hire them for an academic career. I don't care. Like for me, I hire them for the PhD and I would train them for 4 years and then help them with the next step. But whatever they do afterwards, that's not relevant in the way you hire people. At least that's my opinion.
But we should think that the academic career isn't just being a researcher. Yeah, there are lots of careers within academia. Already, as Isabella said, you can become a teacher, you can become a head of department, you can become a dean. There are lots of possibilities to develop there. It's not just a one track.
Yeah.
We should remember that. So just as in industry, you have different chances of promotion and learning new skills as well. So.
Okay, so basically what I'm hearing, nothing is impossible, but stay open, right? To summarize this. So, and also I would say don't close your eyes. And I totally agree with you, Isabel, because a lot of PhDs enter the PhD thinking I want to have an academic career. And I know I know a lot who are actually leaving at this stage. And this brings me to Irena and Ben to say, what made you both decide to choose a career path beyond academia? And have you ever looked back since then? And I mean, now, Ben, you're a bit in the middle. So what would you say?
Good question. Well, actually, I was one of the persons who wanted to become a professor. And after graduating from my PhD, I wanted to spend some time in the industry to experience and also, to increase the probability of landing an assistant professor with some industry experiencing while continuing to publish. It actually would have worked out. I actually got an offer at a European university as an assistant professor, but I declined it because the opportunities I got offered at pharma, they were always a little bit better. And it has been throughout my career. I always had a plan, and then something was thrown at me that I was super curious about. And so far, that has been in the industry.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Something was thrown at me that was a little bit better. We come to this later. What you mean when you say better? To define this a little bit, Irena, what brought you where you are?
I think, as you said, we have to remain open-minded, because sometimes you make these plans, but then depending on the job market, you might have to pivot. And even though I would have definitely considered a job in academia, I graduated at the peak of COVID, where no one knew what was going to happen. It was 2020, and all the academic positions were frozen. The only ones that were open here in US were if you were from Harvard or Stanford or these like top universities, and it would be a steal for like a small university to get such a big name. So I didn't get any call back from any of the places that I applied to, even though I had publications and I had a lot of teaching experience and all of that. So sometimes, I mean, it just happens that you have to pick whatever works in that moment, and keeping in mind that the door is never fully closed. And if you ever want to go back, there are opportunities. One thing that I want to mention, though, is that even if you love teaching and research, there are so many opportunities to do that in an industry setting as well. Like I do mentor a lot of other younger, more junior economists and data scientists as a manager, and also like as part of these mentorship cycles that we have. And that kind of helps me not regret that I'm not teaching, basically. But then on the other hand, you can also do research, because part of what you're doing is developing these models and methodologies to help answer business questions. And so to some degree, that's proper research as well. It's just that it has to be aligned with business goals. It's not, you don't have maybe as much control over the topic as you do in academia, but you still do that to some degree as well.
So, Irena, that actually brings me to a question that I didn't plan to ask, but I'm actually open because, a lot of academics, they tell me I have all the freedom to do the research that I want to do. But I'm sometimes thinking, is that really so true? Or is this also a bit depending on what's hot and what is actually going to be funded? So, Isabel and Bob, is this really true that you're so open to do whatever you want to do? Or in which sense is this guided by?
Of course, you're free to have your own ideas. The question is whether you get funded to do them or not. So it's finding a balance between doing what's expected in order to be getting the funding to actually do the projects that you don't include in your grant, the ones you want to do. And that's the game that you play.
Yeah, I think it goes back to money. So we are dependent on money. And then, yeah, you need to be in the topic and sell it in a good way to get this money. And I think you still always work in a team. So I think that's something also we should not forget. Maybe it depends also on universities and groups, but then you are never on your own. You are always working with people in a team, in a department, in the faculty and everything. And that will, of course, also influence your work and the projects that you would like to do. So I don't think that it's true to say like, hey, we have like all the freedom, because it always goes back to money, because you need money to actually do this research.
But I think you probably have more freedom than you do if you're a researcher within the industry or the biotech at least, where it's more defined what you should be doing. And in that respect, I think we have we have better choice, more choices.
True. Okay. And you can start from scratch also if you want. So if you join a group and then you're like, hey, that's what I'm going to do, you can do that as long as you do it with money that you find in some ways.
Okay, cool. Bob, I have a question for you now. What do you think, like when your best students move to industry, what do you feel, or what does this tell us?
I feel proud. I mean, I'm not sure I have best students. They're all brilliant. But it's like if you've done your job well and you've trained them well and you've given them the skill sets they need in order to be successful in whatever they choose to do, then you can just feel proud of whether they go to industry. I've had some of my students are professors running their groups, independent researchers, many doing other things, and I get in touch with them as long as they're happy in what they're doing, then I'm happy. I don't see it as a loss for anyone who's doing really good research. Look at yourself. You got like 3 immunity papers from your thesis. You could have the doors opening in the academic world for you, but you chose to do something else. So as long as you chase your dreams, then I support you. That's my attitude to my students.
Yeah, I really like that to put the individual and the individual's needs in the spotlight rather than trying to push people in a certain direction, whether they have the scientific merits to do it or not. So Irena and Ben, you both have a PhD and you both hire PhD. What do you think when you look at, and I know, Irena, maybe yours is a bit more mixed, maybe not necessarily. I know, Ben, for you, a lot of the people that you hire may have a PhD. But if you look at PhDs versus maybe other candidates, what do you think are the skills or the things that differentiate them from non-PhDs? Because I think that could be interesting for the PhDs to hear maybe what are differentiating factors as they move into industry.
Great question. I think technical expertise is table stakes. I expect everyone who is finishing a PhD to have the technical expertise. The differentiator for me is really the soft skills, and I look for things like curiosity, like what type of questions do they ask? How do they answer their questions? The questions that I ask, are they thinking in terms of like impact, or are they thinking just in terms of like methodology? Because here in business, that's one of the things that we have the biggest disconnect. We want PhDs to lead always with impact and with storytelling and with insights, and not with the methodologies that they are using. But in general, and now in the age of AI, I think this becomes even more important. For me, the thing that I appreciate the most is like, you can give a PhD person a problem that has no solution and not have them panic, because they are not used to having a playbook. And other employees usually are used to having a playbook, but the PhDs build their own playbook. And so that's something that I think is super, super helpful. And this healthy skepticism, because now in the age of AI, we see a lot of people just like accept the output from AI as given and not even double check it or doubt it. And I think PhDs ask all the tough questions. And so they have this like very healthy skepticism, which I think makes them very valuable in the age of AI, because this is something that it's very hard to teach. Like I cannot make someone curious. I cannot make someone a critical thinker. I cannot make someone a skeptic in a healthy, to a healthy dose. So I think those are things that I really appreciate within a PhD student or graduate.
Great.
Probably echo what Irena said. Probably emphasize from my perspective the being taught to independently solve problems is often what I say a PhD has an advantage from a non-PhD. That said, I'm always looking for equal opportunity. So if a non-PhD applies and they can demonstrate the same capability of solving complex problems independently, I look at them equally.
Can I just say something?
Of course you can.
Can we please stop calling these soft skills? Collaboration, community, critical thinking, creativity, communication, the 5C 20th century skills. These are hard skills. They are lifelong learning skills. They're not transversal skills. They're like the most important skills that you have. Any of you PhDs out there or postdocs or whoever, this is what's going to get you a job. This is what you're going to have use of. Everything else is like an addition on the top. And with the soft skills and the hard skills, I just found out last week, it actually comes from the military, the American military, because the hard skills are actually like knowing how to fire a gun and things. And the soft skills were more the teamwork and so. So it comes from the military, but we need to not call it soft because they're so important. Important skills.
Yeah.
You're right. They are hard. They are hard to build. They are super hard to build. So I agree.
Yeah, it's actually true. And we discuss a lot of semantics. It's really interesting. Should we call them soft skills? Should we say leaving academia? I also love the discussion. Should we call each other PhD students? I mean, we're not going to have that discussion now, but I absolutely don't think student represents of what we do in a PhD. But if someone wants to comment on this, because I see the minds are going, Isabel.
I do like that. So I'm the team that says like PhD student. I always say that to PhD student. I do like that because the student part allows them to remember that they are there for training. So when a PhD student starts, and usually they panic, like freak out in the first year, thinking like, oh my God, I'm supposed to know everything because they hired me, not the 100 other applicants that were there. And then I'm like, no, you're there to be trained. So I do like the student part. To remember the PhD student or PhD candidate or human beings that they are actually there to learn and be trained and to be allowed to embrace this.
Can I ask a critical question here? So how does this word student, influence the identity someone has when they walk into the industry? Irena and Ben, can you tell us a little bit? How do people sometimes come in? Do you feel they have this student identity, or do they present themselves as professionals fresh out of university?
Do you want to go first, Ben?
Still thinking, but I can share my thoughts as I think. I would say it highly depends. It's highly individual. And I think if you apply for an entry-level position, maybe it's the right thing. I mean, to show up genuinely as you are. And if you are from this transitioning from somebody who's graduating soon, curious about their first career, they should feel a little bit like a student because that's they are. So if they would show up with a mentality as a senior executive, I would find this extremely awkward. So I would say yes, and it's good.
Yeah, I think the part where it can be difficult is that PhD graduates usually enter the job market at a level which is maybe a little bit higher than, say, if I take the data science job family. Like if you are entering from undergrad or from a master's, you're probably going to enter as a data scientist, but like as a PhD, maybe you'll enter as a senior data scientist or a staff data scientist. So it is possible that you'll go in a work environment where you'll have people that are lower title than you, but with more on the job experience than you, because they have been there maybe for a year or two. And so sometimes you might feel some imposter syndrome or like think that you are being or you kind of undervalue yourself, basically. Like, others know exactly what you're bringing to the table, but I think sometimes it takes some time for PhD graduates to realize that they are bringing more to the table than the others that are, lower titles. So I think that's where I've seen some challenges. But then once they start working, and if you hold a mirror to them and you tell them that, like, look, this is how I see you and this is how you should be seeing yourself, and once you empower them, then it unblocks completely, their special skill set and helps them be very valuable contributors.
I agree with Isabel, the user student, but I think otherwise semantics is very important, as you probably guessed. And I think that what we can change is not talk about PhD or doctoral education, but we can talk about training in
I think,
that word.
yeah,
Because
yeah, because
you could train to be when you do a master's, you're training to be a scientist. And when you do a PhD, you're training to be a scientist. And when you're a postdoc, you're still training to be a scientist. So if we would frame training as opposed to education, because as soon as you mention education, you think you're sitting in a lecture hall listening to somebody. And a PhD is a lot more than that. But I still think you're a student until you've actually graduated because you're still learning.
yeah, so I'm reading the chat at the same time, and I think so. Definitely, I like the word student, but I would prefer training. And if you are indeed following a PhD and you are paid for that, you have different roles. So you're like the one who is working, you pay your taxes, and then you also have the chance to keep learning. So I don't know, Bob. You will think about that and find a new word.
Well, I use training because I think it should be seamless, and when you go through the academic grades, then you just continue to be trained, and even when you go to industry, you retrain because you're learning something new there as well. It's all about training. I train to be a dean, because no
That's
one, so at every stage, I think training gives you the agency to be, not perfect. You still can become better.
I will say one final word about my own thoughts because I'm very passionate about this topic. Maybe we can call each other PhD researchers, because I think, when you move into an industry like where they typically hire a lot of PhD students, I can understand that most hiring managers understand what a PhD training entails. I think it can sometimes maybe be a bit tricky when you move into industries where they maybe don't typically hire so many PhD students, and the word student, I think, can be very misleading when, for recruiters, because they may not necessarily know what a PhD student is. They read student and they may have a complete wrong misconception. So this is just something that I want to throw in, but that's maybe a discussion for another day. I would very much like PhD.
But
Sorry, Isabel.
PH is actually wrong as well because it's not philosophy anymore.
That's a different discussion,
But
I
I
mean,
think-
like,
but-
bring
but-
the philosophy back into the PhD.
You could take it away because there's not so much philosophy left in it. Right?
We will all change the semantic. No, but I think what is important is the audience, because whatever label that you get on your face, because you're saying now industry, but like industry is super broad, and we're saying now, should I say or should I go, like in academia versus industry? But there's everything that is not academia and not like traditional industry. And I think the way that you're gonna call yourself to a potential future employer depends on who they are and what they want from you. So if you go to government doing some policy related stuff, then you will not call, I guess, yourself researcher, because maybe that's not what they want to hear. I don't know. But I think that depends on the audience. So you have to think of your audience, what do they expect from you? And then you can put a new label on your face and maybe ask Bob for some advice in this case.
I've got lots.
Yeah, that's why.
I agree with you, Isabel. I totally agree with you. But I think sometimes when you think about confidence and identity, the words does something beforehand, which makes you present yourself in a different way. So we coach a lot on confidence. People who come to us, most of what we do, we build confidence. That's all we do, basically. Anyhow, please, let's move on. I really enjoyed this discussion. Maybe we can have it another time at a different place. But I want to ask a question before we come to an end. Actually, two questions. The first one is, because I think that's an important one, work-life balance, salary and purpose. Be honest, which world wins?
Definitely not academia.
Sorry?
Definitely not academia. You're a master student with not very much money. You're a PhD student with not much money. You're a postdoc with not much money. Work-life balance is there is no balance. If you want to be successful, you have to work a lot. And that continues throughout the hierarchy as well. the delivery in the academic world as it's currently structured. And salaries, I mean, this is the thing which maybe isn't always true, but the industry, or biotech at least, always seems to sort of, you could earn more money in the biotech. So that would be attractive for people that are interested in the economy. You don't get rich in the academic world unless you win a Nobel Prize, and very few people do that.
I agree. I think the difference in pay, especially, just keeps increasing over time. Like when I just graduated, I was making twice as much as an entry professor. Now I probably make 6 to 8 times as much. So it does make a huge difference, I think, if you work in the industry. When it comes to work-life balance, I would say no matter where you stay, you have to set your own boundaries. Otherwise, work can become your life. So I don't think there's a difference there between academia and industry. Purpose is personal to each person. So I think, if you're looking for impact at scale, probably industry is better. But if you're looking to really push the envelope and, do cutting edge work, then I think that's probably better for academia. It's rare that you do something like that in the industry.
I think so 2 things. I think the impact in academia, we tend to think only about research. For me, impact is about teaching to students. So it's like direct impact, and that's for me a lot of purpose. And that I think what keeps me in academia is all the work that I'm doing in terms of teaching and education, because you feel like you're shaping the next generation of scientists. So that's really nice. But just one thing. So yeah, salary is like really crap. Like, I mean, don't stay in academia if you want a good salary. I mean, there's a reason why I have a company on the side. That's because I was like, even if you're like extremely good, you will never get a bonus in academia. I got once a bonus in my 10 years, 15 years of academic thing. A bonus that like unheard of almost. So yeah, no, you work hard, but then you don't get bonuses anyway. But then Bob, you said something about if you want to be successful, then you have to work hard. But then I also think that you need to know for yourself what is it to be successful, because for some it's maybe to, I don't know, like find a new drug to cure some diseases. For some, it's have a paper in Nature. For me, it's like something different. And I think that will also influence the work-life balance, because then the choices that you make on a daily life, weekly basis, monthly basis, will also be impacted by that. But you do have to fight extremely hard not to be beaten by the workload, because it's just insane. And that is still the case. And I don't think that it will get better in the future, to be very positive.
So the advice I usually give, and I think I gave that advice to Elena before, follow your purpose and success will follow. That said, in the end, those 3 things are for me a little bit of a triangle. They are interconnected, and of course, one needs to be careful. If you blindly follow your purpose and forget that you need to have a certain amount of money to live a life, that could also be dangerous. But then I also believe, and that's why teaching confidence resonates with me, that you have a purpose and you're confident enough that also you will earn enough money to support yourself. And then for me, work-life balance, it's fluent and highly dependent on one's phase in life and also on individual preferences, but make it work. Again, be confident about how much you want to dedicate to work and how much you want to dedicate to yourself. And one of my former employees always told me, Ben, don't call it work-life balance, call it life. This is what it is.
I really love that. And I think Ben, actually, for everyone who doesn't know, Ben actually mentored me. We have known each other for a very long time. And he was actually also the reason why I started a PhD. I asked him for advice at the time. He was in pharma, very happy. But I think you once said to me, always bring yourself, right? You're in academia, you work a lot, you move in a different environment, you always bring yourself. So I think what Irena said, set your boundaries and start. I mean, I can tell you guys, I'm now building my own company. I don't think I work much less than I did in my PhD. So coming back, you always bring yourself. I think it's a little bit of a personality thing. So you need to find something that works for you. But what I'm hearing, we can agree the pay is better in industry, and what is purpose is very individual, and what we define as success. And I want to have one last question. Everyone can answer 1 second. One piece of advice in 1 sentence as we're coming to an end. What is it that maybe one piece of advice that you wish you had heard when you were at the I don't want to call it a crossroad, or when you had all these different options in front of you and you had to make a choice?
For me, I think it's well, there's two pieces of advice. The first thing is to think earlier than you usually do about what you're going to do next. But the most important thing is to think critically about what you actually want to do. I've gone through my academic career by default. I just sort of started it, and it's just expected I go to the next level. And I've had the privilege of coming all the way up to sort of the top, basically. And I haven't done it without too much critical thinking about why I want to get to the next level. It's an expectation. And I think that's the wrong way of doing it. I think whatever you decide to do is to remember it's a choice, and you need to weigh all the factors in order to make that the best choice for you, whether it be family, whether it be economy, whether it be joy of your work. I think be critical. Don't just let it happen. I don't expect it to happen. It won't. So start early, and it's okay if you change your mind. Many PhD students I talk with, year one of their PhD, everyone wants to be a professor. Year two, everyone wants to be a professor. Year three, they're talking about the industry. Year four, anything but academia. And that's usually the way the conversations go. So, allow yourself to change, but start thinking about it. And it's okay to change your mind, but do it in a critical fashion, not do it in a default fashion.
Change or evolve? That's the next question. Anyhow, I'm choking. Irene.
For me, I would say networking is the most important thing that opens doors for you. You need people that know what skills you have more so than those skills themselves. So that's one thing. And then the other one is that I see a lot of PhDs put so much emphasis on their first job, like it's a life or death situation. And I think they should just think of it as a step forward, and they can always pivot and go elsewhere. So please do not put all that additional burden on yourself.
What was the question again, Elena?
Sorry, the question was one piece of advice, Ben, that you wish you had when you made the transition, something you can share that you think is useful for whoever's in the audience thinking, at this crossroad, thinking about all the different paths ahead.
I mean, I can share what I shared a few months ago in the one-to-one interview we had. I think I learned way too late that it's not about being right. And I wish somebody would have told me that way earlier in my career. And yeah, since I show up not with the intent to be right, it's more successful and way more fun.
Good. I guess some people need to hear that in the audience. Isabel?
Yeah, I think I have two, if I may. So the first one
Sure.
is you do you. So I keep reading the chat, right? And like you're yourself. Like whatever your PI, supervisor, whoever academic system think, fuck off, like just it's your own life, it's your own career. Like it's not even work-life balance, it's really your own life. So you don't owe anything to academia, like you don't owe anything to your supervisor. So just like go deep inside your heart and feel like, okay, what do you want to do afterwards? And you don't need to like do that for someone else. You will do that for yourself. So I think it's really important to sometimes put this narrative on the side and really go deep and look for, okay, what do I really want to do in my life? What are my values? What is my purpose and everything? And to also check that, because of course it's evolving along the way. And very often what I also see is it's difficult to take a decision or to know what we want to do after a PhD because we don't have the information. It's even not like networking, but to go talk to people to just see what they will tell you, like ask them like, hey, how is it to be this person and have this role in a company? Or how does it look like? What is your work-life balance? Like, how much do you earn? Like all of that. And really like get the information, because that's like, if you don't have this information, you can't like make a well-informed choice. So go seek this information, and you have to do that yourself because no one will do it for you. So I think like stay yourself, but then go look for
So the summary
information.
word for us all probably is be authentic.
Yes.
100% be authentic. And I think it's important to remember, I told that story when I was at the conference last week. And, my entire life I built towards a career in science, and I think it's important to allow yourself to evolve. Values change, a lot of things change around, and sometimes people even say, Elena, now you're an entrepreneur. But the funny thing is, being an entrepreneur running this business is not so different from being a researcher in academia. I still use a lot of my skills. Of course, I don't necessarily use my subject matter. So sometimes we feel like, what we do next is somehow very far away from what we did. But I can tell you, in my case, it wasn't. So what I'm trying to say is allow yourself to evolve, even if you have worked towards something. Allow yourself to feel like you want to do something else. And most importantly, I haven't read the chat, but Isabel, definitely, you don't own anyone, anything. Make the decision that you feel is the right decision for your life. I think it's so, so important. I had a lot of good publications. I still decided to walk away from academia. I could have probably done an academic career. My supervisor 2 years later still talks about that I probably would have been a very good scientist. And making that decision is sometimes hard, and it was hard for me. Do I have my doubts sometimes? I absolutely do, and that's just part of it. But I think you need to find a place where you are happy. And I think we can kind of close the panel by saying careers are very individual. We can listen and we can learn from other people, but at the end of the day, you need to find what suits your life choices. It may be personal life, you have a spouse, there's so many factors that are actually involved. So listen to others, get stimulated, but at the end of the day, you need to carve out your own path. Yeah, and with this, I just want to say, first of all, thank you everyone for being so patient with us. Things went wrong, but that's life too. So I've learned to deal with these things. And thank you so much to the